Hello, everyone. In continuing our discussion of the different theories of attachment, I wanted to follow up the work of Harry and Margaret Harlow by talking about the work of Dr. Mary Ainsworth. She was actually a student of Dr. John Bowlby's. And Dr. Ainsworth's study really deserves a lot of merit because it was able to turn around and adequately address things that Harry and Margaret Harlow's study left people wondering. So let's get started. What's interesting about Mary Ainsworth, and I probably need to backtrack just a little, is that in Harry Harlow's study, and if you haven't watched the video yet on Harlow and his rhesus monkeys and food versus contact, stop right now and watch that lecture first. Now, if you see that lecture and you see what it's basically all about, there was a lot of controversy in the Harlow study because he used rhesus monkeys. And a lot of people believe that rhesus monkeys just aren't enough like human babies that you can generalize the results from that study into some of these others. It's not that people wanted human babies to be put in potentially dangerous situations, but they just didn't think it transferred. Then along came Dr. Mary Ainsworth, who basically turned around and created an experiment that we refer to this day as the strange situation experiment, that basically used a mother and their child, but did it in such a way that while there was a little bit of discomfort, they by no means were put into a dangerous situation. Now, what would happen in this study is that basically there are several stages to how this study plays itself out. First of all, in the very first phase of the study, mom would bring her child into a room. Usually it was at the university. Basically, they had a chance to turn around. I will say this, mom and Dr. Ainsworth would meet in advance. They would get to see the room. They would get to meet an assistant of Dr. Ainsworth who plays the part of the stranger. That part would all be played out. So that by the time they were ready to run the actual experiment, mom and the child would enter an unfamiliar room. Mom knows what's going on, but obviously a little baby, not so much. And a lot of times, mothers were asked to urge a child to explore, maybe do things with the child. All right. After a short while, an unfamiliar adult, in this case a stranger, would enter the room. You see in the picture that's before you, there's 14-month-old Lisa that's down there on the floor. To the left is her mother, and to the right is, I forget her name, she was a graduate assistant of Dr. Ainsworth, and her job was just to come in and sit in the chair to begin with. All right. They wanted to see how the baby would react to the presence of a stranger. They also wanted to see how the baby would react in an unfamiliar room. Then at a certain point, mom would be given a cue to turn around and leave the room. All right. And so when she gets the cue, she up and leaves, leaving the baby with the stranger. All right. And we wanted to see how the baby would respond when mom would leave the room. After what was probably no more than 30 seconds to maybe 45 seconds, mom would return. This is what they called the reunion. And this is probably one of the most important times because basically you want to turn around and see how the baby responds to mom's return to the room. Is the baby happy? Is the baby indifferent? Something else? Hard to tell. And at which time, a few moments after that, the stranger, which a lot of times, like I said, was just an assistant, would just leave the room. Now you're back in a situation where it's just mom and the baby. And when mom gets the right signal, she turns around and leaves the room, which causes your baby to be all by himself or herself. In this case, 14-month-old Lisa would be by herself. And of all things, when the door opens, it's not mom that comes back in, it's the stranger. All right. So they wanted to see how the baby responded at the presence of the stranger and not mom. And then after just a handful of seconds, mom would turn around, usually within a minute, and she would come back into the room. And this is what we called the second reunion. So this is sort of the setup. Mom and child enter an unfamiliar room. They want to see how the child responds. Usually there was a camera that was hidden behind a cloth or a smoked piece of glass. Mom knew it was there, but the child did not. We watch how the child responds. Number two, how does a child respond to an unfamiliar adult, a stranger, when they come in the room? Number three, how does the child respond when mom leaves the room? Number four, how does the child respond when mom returns? All right, the reunion and the stranger leaves. Number five, how does the child respond when mom leaves the room and the baby's all by themselves? And then six, after about 30 seconds or a minute, the door opens and who comes in? Not mom, but the stranger. And then finally, after about a minute there, who returns? But basically, mom comes in. It's called the second reunion. We want to see how the baby handles something like that. So this is the study. I am going to post a video where you can watch this whole thing play out. I can't get it to run through this PowerPoint, unfortunately. What did we find from this study? In terms of infant reactions, okay, their attachments, the healthiest babies showed what was called a secure attachment. All right. Babies who possess a secure attachment are the type of babies that when mom left the room, they would get upset. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, that's actually a good thing, because what would happen is they would leave, they would cry when mom would leave, but they would be pretty happy upon her return. If you watch the video that I've set forth, you'll see that baby Lisa almost stops crying immediately when her mom comes back into the room. Secure attachment babies clearly prefer their moms rather than strangers in this regard. And they are the type of babies that will explore the room if they're given the urge, but they do the safe base thing. They'll look back just to make sure every once in a while mom is close by. So these are elements of a secure attachment. There are some unhealthy attachments as well, and they are unfortunately worth noting. For example, some babies exhibited what we would call an avoidant reaction. These kind of babies, a lot of times, were not bothered by a stranger showing up into the room. And believe it or not, they didn't seem to be too terribly bothered when mom left the room. All right? It's not unhealthy for a baby to get upset at mom's departure. It is a little bit unhealthy for a baby not to care when mom leaves. Furthermore, avoidant reaction babies often didn't care when mom returned to the room. All right? They just sort of ignore her and go on about their business. So we have secure attachments, and then we have an unhealthy type of attachment known as an avoidant reaction. Dr. Ainsworth also found another unhealthy type of attachment that she referred to as a resistant attachment. Babies who exhibit a resistant attachment, and sometimes this is known for what it's worth as an ambivalent attachment, these type of babies do not tend to get up and check out the room. They tend to stay very close to mom. Even when mom urges, they don't want to leave. They want to stay very close. What's fascinating is that they may get upset when mom leaves, and they may turn around and seem pretty happy when mom returns. But believe it or not, what Dr. Ainsworth noticed is that a lot of ambivalent or resistant attachment babies got angry when mom picked them up, all right? As if wanting to be picked up, and yet at the same time, we're sort of hitting at mom and things like that. It's what we would refer to as sometimes angry and sometimes passive, that passive aggressive reaction in that regard. So they'd be calm, and then they would sort of explode in anger and frustration. So we have secure attachments, avoidant attachments, resistant/ambivalent attachments, and then finally what we might call disorganized attachments. Okay? Babies that express what is called a disorganized attachment often seem confused. Science tells us, and Dr. Ainsworth studies, is that they a lot of times show what we would call contradictory behavior. They're very inconsistent in how they act. It's it's almost as if they're trying to figure out what to do, and they're sort of guessing at it because they're not quite sure. So these are the four types. The first type of which is very healthy, the secure attachment. The other three, disorganized, avoidant, and ambivalent resistant, not so much. Now, the big question a lot of people will ask is why? What are the causes of these insecure attachments? All right. Dr. Ainsworth, in doing her study, she's a very brilliant psychologist, basically found that the reason for many insecure attachments was completely and directly related to the child's mother. If you wanted to understand why the child was acting the way they were, often you could see it in the mother. Now, securely attached babies a lot of times had mothers that liked being moms. Doesn't mean they liked them 24/7, but they enjoyed the job. They liked the job and they of being a mom, and they interacted with their babies. And it showed in how the babies would interact with them and miss them when they left and be happy when they returned. So a lot of securely attached babies had moms that really did truly enjoy the task of taking care of their little one. Dr. Ainsworth found that a lot of mothers of avoidant babies were the types of moms that often did not plan to become a mom. It wasn't the right time, and yet it happened. All right. Um, because of it, it's almost like they're resentful. They were very resentful. And because of their resentment towards having to be a mom, they wouldn't always do all the things they needed to do. They wouldn't interact with their child. They'd go off and do their own things. They leave a child by themselves and not really doing much to spend one-on-one time with them, be it quantity or quality time. And because of it, you had a baby that didn't care when mom left, and you had a baby that didn't care when mom returned. All right. Those babies that were what we would call resistant ambivalent, sort of that passive aggressive response, actually often had mothers that were sort of the same way. They were a bit passive aggressive. They could be calm and everything was good, but they could blow up and have moments where they were very, very angry. And you saw the exact same behavior in their children. So that happened a lot. And then we saw parents who had disorganized babies, and mom and in her way of doing things was just as disorganized. Infants and toddlers need scripts. They need to do things in a routine. Okay, they like routine. Routine is something that's predictable. And a lot of disorganized babies had parents that did not keep to a routine. They kept changing things around, they kept doing different things. There wasn't much routine, and it showed in their children's behavior. So there you have it. The studies of Dr. Mary Ainsworth, a very, very smart individual and very powerful studies to say the least. Um, don't forget to look for the video that it's a YouTube video link. You can click on it and see a little bit of this actual experiment in action. All right. Keep up the great work.